Hey everybody, Angel with Miniature Aircraft again, and so here is another tool. You know what, let me grab the orange one, because the orange one shows a little better. Made a green one, orange one. This is a tool to do preload on your bearings. So again, nice branded with the Excel logo that you can see there. And what this will do is it will preload the bearings in the tail case right here. Preload means putting a load on the bearing before actually putting a load on it. And what that does is it protects the bearing by taking the slack out of the system so that the bearing will run nice and true and it will be free of vibration. So we've got our tail shaft, we've got our metal crown gear. Now these gears have a shim that will go up against the bearing. We also need our collar, and we need the shim for the collar. Oh, there goes the shim for the collar. And we'll also need the screws, the necessary set screws to put this all together. So I'm gonna go ahead and just grab the set screw, one of the set screws, and put it into the crown gear here, or the bevel gear, so that we can get it on the tail case. So earlier when I was playing around with this, I made a mistake and I assembled the tail case backwards. So don't do that. The tail output shaft will go out the same way as the tail control rod support. And so I got my shim. I like to go ahead and start the shaft. Oh, there you go. This goes in this way. So we start the shaft into it, and then I just kind of push it just a little bit to keep that shim in place and try not to drop it. There we go. Okay, so the shim's in place now. I slide the gear in there, push the shaft through, collar, shim, and at this point, oh, these shims are tiny, so be careful with them. At this point, I push the shaft through into position. I find the position on the gear and I kind of line up the hole so that I can push the screw through. Now what I want is, I want that bevel gear in place. And the place that we're going to make the preload adjustment is going to be on the other side, on the collar. I'm not going to Loctite it right now because I just want to get everything in place. I'll screw it down tight, I'll get all the screws assembled, then I'll back out one screw at a time and Loctite one screw at a time. So I take my preload tool and I'm going to wedge it in there. Now, the tool may or may not go all the way in. It just depends on your printer tolerances or whatever. This one printed on a different printer, so I'm gonna use the green one because it does go in all the way for me. And so you can hear it kind of snapping into place there. And the idea is try to get it in there as far as possible. Again, there is a wedge in the tool built in, so it may or may not go in all the way, also depending on temperature and I mean, we're talking about maybe 0.2 of a millimeter tolerance that I put into this, so that you know, it's not going to be perfect, but the idea is that you're putting pressure on that bearing and you're taking the slack out of the system so that the bearing runs nice and true and smoothly. So this tail system right now has no slack in it. So what I want to do is slide over. I should have put the set screw in the collar and with the bearing, by the way. Let me redo this. With the bearing, or with the set screws, the set screw lines up to the set screw here and to the divot here on the collar. So let's see the set screw divot here, and this one I'll line up. That way you don't have to find it or hunt it. You just can do the one that you can see. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the set screw in and put the tool back. The set screw is just, again, flush in there, not too tight. We don't want to actually set it yet. So we wedge our tool in there. Tool's nice and tight. Then we can put our set screw in place. So now we can remove the tool and just check. and we have a system now that does not have any play in it. Okay, that system's going to be nice and tight. It's going to last you a long time. So there you go. Use our 3D printable tool on Thingiverse to set your preload. Have a good one, and don't forget to Loctite.